So, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Appalachia's Homestead. Welcome back to the farm. It is a cold and dreary Monday. We got a bunch of rain again yesterday. Come here and give me a hug. I mean, it is cold. And I've come back up here after lunch to do some extra barn work. I'm going to go ahead and get all my new straw out as much as possible to try to put some more bedding down for all my critters. But I wanted to drop off some videos today. I have 2 videos that I want to film, and I'm going to try to keep them a little bit separate. I could mesh them all together into one, but I'm going to keep them separate just to kind of tidy them up. So I hope you had a good weekend. Today is Monday, November the 3rd, and things are continuing to roll as they are in this country, and we're all watching and waiting and watching how people are. I haven't heard of anything specific today, but you know what? I'm also not particularly trying to look. So, like I said, I have 2 videos, 2 things that are on my brain, and have been for a couple of days. And like I said, I hope you had a good weekend. So you're going to have a good week, right? Yes, you are. We're going to have a good week. I've got a little bit of the heat going, guys. It's a little chilly. Okay, so I made a video last week or so talking about a gentleman that I had met. And James and I both met this gentleman, and I called him a holy man. And because I felt like he was very devout and very devoted. And I sat and had a 2.5 hour conversation with him. And he said some very profound things in that conversation. Now, understand that when I give you a very brief synopsis of a 2.5 hours or roughly conversation, and I'm trying to make it 10 to 20 minutes, I never have a 10-minute video. But you know what I'm saying? There's going to be a lot of things that aren't mentioned, or I sort of guess that you would assume, but I didn't tell you. So I'm going to go back and revisit a couple of things that, because I'm getting a lot of questions about this gentleman, and things that he may or may not have said, or things that a couple people did assume that I thought that doesn't really represent what I said or what he said. So I want to just clarify a few things. So the majority of you that watched that video from last week, and thank you for all the support there. I know a lot of us are soul searching, and I'm just going to tell you right now, the soul search is over, folks. It's Jesus. Okay. And we are going to continue as a people, okay, no matter who we are, where we're from, we're going to continue to watch things, in my opinion, get difficult. Whether you want to look at that financially, if you want to look at that for people's health, I could really go full-blown doomsday on everybody all the time. And, there's been a great time in our life over recent years where it's like we just felt we were stuck there the whole way. But ultimately, we're not, because the battle is already won, and that is through the Lord Jesus Christ, okay? And it is that easy, because somebody's going to say, well, I didn't say life was going to be easy. I didn't say our journey was going to be easy. I'm saying the answer to all of our problems is easy. We have responsibilities in that, but it is that simple. And that was the main point over and over and over again that he would go back to in that conversation. I hope you get to see, or I hope you go back and watch the first video. It will make a lot more sense if you do. The majority of you were very, very supportive. Had some questions, or were very supportive, or were very nice. There was a person or two that was very offended by what I shared with you from that conversation. And one particular woman, she wrote a very hefty paragraph. She actually went and deleted it. I did not delete her comment. She deleted it. She did. I did not respond to her. I felt fleshy to respond to her, but then I went, you know what? God's going to handle it. God's going to handle that. And because my first thought was, you know, you are exactly the person that this gentleman was talking about. You know, I grew up Southern Baptist my whole life. And I go to church with people, and I wasn't offended by anything that he said. See, that's when the spirit of offense starts to take over you. That's when you really, really, really need to question where you are. And, you know, is it really about your religion? Is it really about your church? Is it really about law? I don't think so. It should be about Jesus. And I want to mention this to you right now, this particular next point, because this actually was probably the most important, one of the most important points to take away from the conversation if you were there. And I know you weren't, so I'm doing my best, okay? In one part of the conversation, we got really deep in talking about a lot of things, and I asked him, so if you don't know, so I had a conversation with a gentleman who is a very devoted Christian, was fasting, and he's elderly, he's 80 years old, and you know, the main point that he hit on, or two main points, the main one that I've already mentioned was that the great deception of our time is coming from within our churches. Okay, I'm not telling you to not go to church. And he didn't point blank tell you to not go to church, but he did tell you to soul search and to really understand, where are you going? What is your church leadership doing? What is being called out? Are they walking the walk, etc., etc.? Now, you would think, as this woman did, as she got very offended, that, you know, he was just full of persecution. And I want to tell you that while he was, I guess if you want to call it harsh on that subject, I asked him, I said, can I ask you a particular question? And he was like, well, sure. And I said, do you see demons? And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, when you're out and about and you're around people, do you see demons? Because I have told you before that there was a lot of similarities between this gentleman and my father-in-law who is passed on. I asked him the same question. This was back in like probably 2010, somewhere in that ballpark. And I asked him that question then, and he said yes. I said, how do you know? Because he had talked about an experience within the church of a woman, an exorcism that happened. And I asked him, I said, how did you know that this woman was possessed? Now, this is my father-in-law. This is back then. And he said, you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their eyes. That's what he said. Now, this was my father-in-law in 2010. So I brought this because I felt like there were so many similarities. And I told you again the other day, my husband was like, that's the closest to meeting somebody like my father I've ever met. And so I asked him the same question. And it was interesting because I said, you know, I was sort of expecting something like that. And he looked at me and he said, no. I said, you don't. He said, I don't look for it. Which, that was not what I get it, but I was like, really? He said, I don't look for it. He said, I only look for the best and the good in people. He said, I've been in places where I felt, he said, I don't even have to look, but I feel spiritual. I feel their presence. I know. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, oh, I stay away and I pray. I said, really? He said, yes. He said, because I don't want them to jump over on me. they're not coming around me. I'm only going to be seeking out the good. I want to love and seek out the good right now. He said that's what we need to be doing. Now, obviously, somebody's going to say, well, what if you're in a situation where we didn't go into, this was in the context of, do you feel this happening? Do you sense this happening? Is it happening? And he focused back on, it was like he just sort of slapped you back into, I want you to focus on good. Because in the previous video, I also said, he had talked about there being a lot of deception in the churches, which there is. You know that. And he said, a lot of times you have the best breakthroughs in places which are with the worst of sinners, though. He said, I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not saying they're sinners. And he said, I said to him, they're searching. He said, yes, the people that are searching. He said, they oftentimes have the best hearts, and they need that spiritual help. He said, so I'm going to try to reach every one of them that I can. So here's what I want to say. While he had some serious words for everyone, and a lot of you got wrapped around the whole conversation of rapture, is there going to be a rapture or not? I'm not here to argue that with you. I've said that in the past on my videos. And he obviously had a different opinion than a lot of you out there. And here's my little personal pinpoint opinion. I think it's important to believe how you want to, but at the same time, I think that you should prepare that there's not a rapture, because you don't know the timing of things. It's interesting. I'm going to mention this. It's a little negative, but I want to make the point. Somebody said something the other day that I had mocked the rapture. No, I did not. You're a false accuser and you're a liar, ma'am. I never did that. What I did was make a video in jest about somebody trying to tell you that the rapture was going to happen on a certain date. How many times in history has that happened? And are you still here? If you believe there is a rapture or not, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to believe, but I am going to tell you that if you're putting your hope into a human being sitting around doing, equations from an algebra book to tell you a certain date and time if something's going to happen, no one knows the time or the hour. There may be signs of the times that we are in, but for someone to sit there and to falsely claim that they know when Christ is specifically going to return, and you better have your waffles with maple syrup at this time so you can be around to watch it happen, that is wrong. So I never mocked any of that, and I'm not mocking anyone here for what they believe. Okay? So you're a false accuser, ma'am. I just want to say that. And I wanted to clarify that this gentleman is really trying to push the message of loving people. And I think right now, folks, with the level of anxiety and depression and fear and spiritual warfare that is just raging, I think it's very important that we do our best to be kind and to love each other. So to the people that false accuse, I still love you, but I am going to call out a wrongdoing if I see it. See, that's telling someone the truth. That's speaking the truth. That's not being hateful. That's saying that's not true. That's a lie. Do you know what you're saying? And you might want to think about correcting that in the way that you know how, because that is not true. But here we are in the middle of, we don't know what's going to happen with all of the benefits that and somebody's going to say, they're not benefits. Okay, whatever you want to call it, okay? It gets really, it's total fatigue a lot of days for a lot of us when everything is an argument. Let's bring it back around town to what is important. Repenting and accepting the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior. realizing what is happening to all of our brothers and sisters around us. A lot of good people, as per this gentleman I was telling you about, he will tell you, a lot of people are still good. They just don't know. They just don't know a lot of things. They've been raised a certain way, or they haven't read the book, or they're not, there's this deception. And we have to try to reach them. And we have to try to be more gentle, as hard as that is. Even when someone is wrongdoing you. No, don't be abused. But don't try. We're supposed to love them. There's a lot of people that do you wrong, just like there's people that have done me wrong. I mean, that's the unfortunate way of the world. And that was his most important statement, I felt. And I think right now, with people being so far on edge, do the best that you can, folks. Do the best that you can for you and taking care of you and your family. No one denies that. But I hope you join me. I mean, over the past 2 days and even today, I've picked multiple charities to donate to. Because I think that it's important that we hand out that lifeline. If we give up on the most important factors, folks, we're done. And a lot of people are going to sit there and say we are. I don't fully believe that. I think things are going the way that, well, no one is stopping God's plan. In closing, I will say this. I don't know if is it the Sean Ryan show? Is that his name? He's a big podcaster. He has like 2 or 3 million subscribers here on YouTube. And there's a video that came out 3 days ago. I believe 3 days ago. And of course my video about the Holy Man came out, I don't know, last week. It was before this. And on 3 days ago, he released a part of a podcast into a video talking about how a great famine is coming. Now, am I saying that what we're going through right now with SNAP or whatever is a famine? No. What I'm saying is, I think it's very true that we are at the beginning of a lot of sorrows. Those sorrows could be for 5 years. They could be for 100. And everything that we do affects how we're going to handle things going forward. More importantly, in my opinion, our children and grandchildren. So we have to do the best that we can with what we have to sustain and to help others. If I were to summarize that conversation with him, I think that is the biggest takeaway. The level of deception and our responsibility to work on continuing to be as Christ-like as we can. And I wanted to clarify all of that for you because some of you had some questions. I know it's tough right now, especially going into the holiday season. It always is tough. So do the best that you can in staying strong. Give, even if it's just $1, go do something today. Don't worry about the rest of it. Take care of your mental, emotional, and spiritual self by giving. What happens with it after you give is not up to you. Don't think about that. You're taking on a burden that you don't need to take on. A stress that you do not need to bear. You do what is right. Like, subscribe, and share. Pray, prep, and be peaceful. I'm about to go in here and get mud slung everywhere. But I wanted to clarify that, and I have another video coming up. And I hope you stick around for it. Coming up next. Like, subscribe, and share. Pray, prep, and be peaceful. I'll see you then.